you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
How about now?
can you hear me now?
How about now?
Guys, should I start over?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Am I ready to start? All right, guys. So we see that you couldn't hear us, so we apologize for that. But again, of course, you are watching the Free Assange Vigil. We are now going to be streaming on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So welcome. I'm Taylor Hudak. I'm joined by my co-hosts Andrew Smith and Steve Poikinen. Now today, Thursday, April 9th, marks 39 days until the start of the second round of Julian Assange's extradition hearings. And it is 3,411 days since his illegal and arbitrary detention, and 363 days since his arrest outside of Belmarsh prison. And we are actually approaching the 1 year since that took place this Saturday. And then also 29 days since Chelsea Manning was released from federal custody, and 1,041 days since Reality Winner was taken into federal custody. So for this evening, we have 3 guests that will be joining us. Right now, we are joined by 2 activists, and they are returning guests. We're really happy to have them joining us. Once again, Kendra Christian from Colorado, and she is with the Denver Free Assange group, as well as Natalia Rivera-Scott, who is an activist. And I want to thank you guys both so much for taking the time to come on this vigil. So I want to start with you, Kendra. If you could just provide us an update with what's going on in your town, specifically with the Denver Free Assange group, and sort of your take on what has happened so far this year, and maybe some initiatives that you all have coming up.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me on. So one of the things that we wanted to do, we had quite a big group go out to DC for the extradition hearing, and then one of the things we wanted to focus on here in Denver was to have, one of these information type events, like they had with Free the Truth that they were doing out in the UK. I think those were really successful. So obviously COVID kind of put a damper on any sort of event like that, but not completely, because that's online now. So that's one thing that we're promoting. We have that out to our mailing list now. That's another event that's going to take place on the 11th. So they're going to be quite a few events going on the 11th. So we'll join the digital march that's going to be happening. So we'll get that out to our group. Same thing with, I wanted to announce that. So on April 11th, so Denver time, it's 10:30, Eastern time, it's 12:30. And that's the Free the Truth event that Deepa is putting on. And hold on, I wanted to read this off, but that's going to have a lot of great speakers. Dr. Catherine Brown, Andrew Feinstein, Kristen Rafson, I always murder his name, Stephania Marizzi, Craig Murray, Peter Oburn, and Chris Williamson. So that's 5:30 p.m. BST, 12:30 EST, and then 10:30 our time. And then, so we're promoting that, we're promoting the march, and then I think, in the midst of that, just more of these information events, and also open to some ideas from other activists, like how we can be more effective online and not just in our own echo chamber. I really like what Truman did, where he'll tweet out, like, everybody contact this MP. So that's something that I would like to get going in the States, to get the activists that are here supporting an Assange all together doing some of these things, so that it's just, we have more of an effect online. But certainly the inability to assemble kind of, puts a damper on things a little bit as far as rallies and stuff go. So just trying to be creative and get the word out, and really, really pressure people to take whatever actions that they're doing and, put that towards actually contacting their representatives at all levels of government.
Boots Riley, one of my musical heroes and a guy that I share a birthday with, put out a tweet a week or so ago, talking about, like, if you're an activist and you're a radical, here's something you can do on lockdown. Roll through neighborhoods really slow with a loudspeaker in like a series of cars where everyone is, you know, shouting out the same message through a megaphone or through a loudspeaker, and just do that during daylight hours. And I thought that I know that there are like evangelical groups that are doing that all throughout the Midwest right now, so we might as well add a little bit of flavor to
that. Add some truth to it.
But no, I'm for it, and I'm excited about the event on the 11th. I think that if it's anything like the one with Kristen Hampson and Nozomi Haise and Alice Wright, that was phenomenal. The 10th anniversary of Collateral Murder. I guess, I don't know, symposium.
So, yeah, right now. Yeah, right now it's a great time, like Kendra was saying, to be calling your representatives and really taking initiative that way. And again, there is an event this Saturday. We will remind you guys of that also towards the end of this vigil. But Natalia, I want to also let you have the opportunity to provide us with an update, what's going on in your town, some initiatives that you have been working on, and maybe what you intend on doing in the future. I know, of course, the future is a little uncertain at this time, but if you just want to give us all an update.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So last time I was here, I was with another group, and I founded a new group with Renata that couldn't be here in September, I think. So no, in October. So now we are called Mexico con Julian. It's called Mexico with Julian. And we are trying to be more present with other people that are not yet like into the cause completely, but they are really interested. So we have been like approaching people and taking the pictures, like the We Are Millions campaign with the posters. And we have been planning lots of activities, mainly joining the global actions so far. So it's mainly the two of us with some other people that have been joining us in some of the events. No? Hello?
Yeah, sorry. I was muted. I was gonna say that's really cool. What led you guys to split apart and start two separate functioning groups out there?
Well, the thing is, in the other group there was authoritarian kind of situation, so I just wanted to be here for Julian, and I didn't want to be in any trouble with anyone, so I just decided to peacefully split. And I found Renata in one of the events of I think it was in the Million Mask March that we organized in Mexico City. So she joined us, and then we like clicked, and then we started like planning this new group together.
That's awesome. How have you guys kind of changed? Well, I guess, what's the state in Mexico right now with like COVID-19 and all that? Because throughout the states, it's really hit or miss depending on where you're at, where some states like Steve up in California have a strict, like if you're on the road, the police will stop and ask what you're doing. But here in Ohio, we're supposed to be shelter at home, but no one ever stops and asks you, hey, why are you out? So kind of what's the environment like out there a little bit?
So here we have been in the emergency, like national emergency situation for, this is the next week is going to be the second week. But the thing is, the government was really slow to act. The president was touring 1 week ago, kissing children. So it was, we were listening to the news outside Mexico that the situation was really worrying and really difficult, and that we had to take measures. And the government was still saying that it wasn't like that. So the president that is supposed to lead an example wasn't. So all of the people following him were not taking this seriously. And now we are in like forced lockdown, but no police present in the streets for like punishing people or anything, but we are really, really way behind like the first world. So the cases of dead people and contagious people are growing really fast. We acted really, really late.
So do you think that that's going to have like a larger impact in Mexico, or do you think that's something that there wasn't like I don't know like the case count and all that kind of stuff going on out there. So is it like, would you say it's like on par with what the United States is, or like a little bit less or a little bit better?
No, I think we have the official numbers were till today like 150 dead people. So it's not, of course, as much as the US, I think. But I don't really trust these numbers. And the thing is, Mexico doesn't have enough resources to be able to treat all the people like in the public health system, all the people that get sick. So we are really worried that this is going to be not possible to contain because of the economic resources. There's no ventilators, no medicines, no nothing. But this has been happening in Mexico for more than a year, that there are not enough medicines and for treating people generally. So we are really worried about that. Well, I'm really worried about that.
And how are things up in Denver right now overall? Like, what's your guys's like shelter in place orders like and things like that? Is it pretty strict, or are they kind of lax up there?
So it's shelter in place, but it's been, it hasn't been some of the horror stories I've heard other places, although we kind of seem to be following suit with the mountains. So I just read an article today, actually, that Glenwood Springs, which is a mountain town here in Colorado, that they are going to mandate that you wear the, the PPE, the mask if you're out in public, things like that. But otherwise here in Denver, everybody's shelter in place. They've closed all non-essential businesses, but like construction, different things like that are still considered essential. Oddly, like fast food drive up is still open. So if you have like a drive up, then you can be open, grocery stores, etc. So all that's still here. You can, there haven't been any strict measures so far about going outside. So you can still, actually, I think people are on walks more, things like that. So, but nothing, you're not supposed to be in groups of 10 people or more. People are definitely staying away from each other and social distancing. So that, that is going on here in Denver. And I know anybody who is working from home is, working with those, with the new type of thing, everything online, everything phones, everything the meeting. So from what I hear in general is people who are working, they're working a lot more. So that's kind of the state of things here, at least with the COVID. I don't know what the death figures are. I haven't really been paying attention to that. So, but I do think it's plateauing a bit here. So at least from what's been reported.
So, Natalia, it came out in the news a while back that the president of Mexico actually spoke out in favor of Julian Assange after pressure from the labor movement out there. Could you talk about that a little bit, and have you seen it kind of make any of an impact?
Well, I hope I'm not going to say anything wrong, but I'm not pro the president. I'm not very happy with this guy. So I wasn't expecting that he would talk about Assange, and it was really good in a way that sadly most of the people here don't know who Assange is. So they were like, "Oh, who is this guy?" And I hope they started like Googling him or something. But it was a big surprise for us. The sad thing is like he never spoke about him again, or he never spoke about Chelsea. But it was really good. I think it put Mexico for at least a couple of days, like in the news, in the activism world. Like Mexico was finally, like I know Assange's mom was tweeting about that, and she thanked him through Twitter and everything. But the thing is, for me, although it was really important, it was just that he didn't like talk about that again, or he didn't like follow like this. So the sad thing about here is like we've been having so many problems that people just like were like, okay, who is this guy? Okay, the Mexican president spoke about him, but then there was no follow up.
And now that there's no such thing as free assembly anymore, now that there's no way for people to gather without violating a series of state, municipal, and federal orders, at least here, I think the most effective way that we have outside of just bombarding the halls of power with phone calls and letters and whatnot is to make Julian's release part of an ongoing and international general strike.
Mm-hmm.
I think without having that be conditional to no longer withholding our labor, then all these you hear people talking on every single like quote unquote left channel, or in the progressive space, or just throughout independent media about how we've been given the perfect toolkit to have an at-home general strike. And one of the first things that I saw this morning was a thread like, hey, what are your demands for a general strike? And out of almost 60 comments that I saw, only one person had mentioned election integrity or election reform. Nobody had mentioned Julian Assange. Nobody had mentioned the national security state. Nobody had mentioned the surveillance state. And it made me want to just shake these guys, because like if you're setting your bar that low where I'll withhold my labor unless you enact Bernie Sanders' platform, you're automatically selling yourself short. And there is nothing that the people in power would like better than a half-assed general strike. Because if you just throw a couple of little breadcrumbs at people and that's all it takes to get them back to making you, multimillionaires or billionaires, if that's all it takes, then that's all you're going to get. And you're going to get significantly less of it after the fact, because if you can remove a right with a stroke of a pen, it wasn't a right to begin with. When I pause dramatically like that, that means one of you guys can jump in.
No, I was just thinking a little bit about what you said. I think like that's part of the reason that, I got active when Assange was arrested in the first place, is just because it's still, even more, I feel like people are really distracted with what's going on because there's been so many things that have just been unleashed on us recently, especially with the virus. So many measures being pushed through, a lot of different things to keep people focused on. And then you see even within, I'd say, independent media, and even within people who are, and I think, looking for the truth, how difficult it is to find information. And so I think that the fight for Assange is even more pivotal right now and more important, because really there's not, no matter what we fight for, if this goes through, or if Assange dies, we don't have another chance for that. And nothing means anything without free press. They'll just say, yes, we did give it to you, and then we don't have it. Really, we already have that situation now with propaganda, where they say, oh, yes, the government cares about your health, or whatever it is that they're gonna say that they do, and then meanwhile do something the complete opposite. And so I think that's a challenge right now, is to really get people informed and focused, and see how that's really important right now as well. A top priority always is free press, and especially now with Assange and the COVID in the prisons. That's just such hypocrisy. So.
That's actually something super interesting too. because the prison systems here in the US, and it's something that's affected me really personally, because I have a coworker whose significant other's in immigrant detention right now. And we've had in a couple counties over up to 3 inmates die, at least 3, let me word that properly, and multiple others across the state, multiple other prisons that have had COVID reports from inside of them. And so the state started giving out orders, hey, you guys can release nonviolent offenders. And he had a bail hearing yesterday for his significant other, and they rejected her release. And so it's something that we're literally seeing like this slow roll of a pending genocide right now if we can't get these people out of jail. Julian and every other nonviolent offender included in that across the world. Could you, Nat, talk a little bit about the kind of the state of the prisons out in Mexico, and if there's been any action or any thought about that out there?
Well, there hasn't been any reporting in the news about the release of prisoners. I've heard horrible things about the jails here. That I have a friend that's in a federal. I have a friend, federal prison in the U.S. and we were trying to extradite him to Mexico to be closer to his family, and the lawyers were like, "No way, you don't want to be in jail in Mexico." So it's overpopulated. The conditions are terrible. But I think in Mexico, one of the main situations is the amount of poor people that live in the streets or in terrible situations. So honestly, in the news, not even the mainstream media, but the independent media, there is not a lot of reporting in like population in jail. So I don't think, sadly, that there's a priority. And here it's not about like releasing the non-violent detainees or prisoners. It's just not, we don't talk about that. So it hasn't been reported in the news.
Could you talk a little bit, Kendra, about the event that's coming up with you guys and DEPA on the 11th?
Well, so this is an event that DEPA is putting on. It's called Free the Truth. So it's one of, she's put quite a few of these on, and I did go over that a little bit at the beginning, but just to mention it again. So this will be on the 11th, and it's an online event. So if you go onto our Twitter, we've retweeted it in the timeline. I'll retweet it again after this. And it's a speakers event. So there'll be Dr. Catherine Brown, Andrew Feinstein, Kristen Rafson, Stephania Maruzzi, Craig Murray, Peter Oborn, and Chris Williamson. And so that's at 10:30 Denver time, 12:30 Eastern time. And then I think that'll be followed up by that Courage Foundation event that you're in, Andrew, and then all day the online march all day that I think everybody can take part in.
And as a quick correction, I'm not going to be in the Courage Foundation event. I'm going to be in the Sydney Group's event.
Oh, in the Sydney.
And that'll,
wow. So another event. Okay.
Yes, I won't be with Courage Foundation. It'll be the Sydney Group. And that's happening at 11:30 a.m. Sydney time on April 11th, which is 9 p.m. Eastern time, the day before. So it'll be Friday for us at 9 o'clock, but for them, that's 11 in the morning their time because they're like 12 or 14 hours ahead of us.
Oh, that's great. Do you guys have that tweeted out, Andrew? Because I'm getting ready to send another update email to our group, and it would be great to include that in there. As like,
absolutely. You can, Candles for Assange, actually, Alex does a great job collecting events, and she has a tweet out with all of the events around the world right now, all of the different live stream events.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Times and their UTC stamps for like the plus or minus.
Nice. Yeah, she does great work. She's awesome.
Yes, she is.
So do you have anything planned, Nat, for the 11th?
Yes, so Renata and I are planning to get together with all the safe precautions of being in the same place. But I think it's an organized event, but we haven't been able to make a flyer like we usually do. So it's not still in the Candles for Assange or any other group, but we will post the information probably tomorrow. But of course, we'll be there. The New Zealand group contacted me too and asked us to join. So we are going to have like a solidarity event too for them. And we are in contact constantly with other groups. So we are going to be there like to represent Mexico.
That's really awesome. I'm proud. So there's the Sydney event on the 11th. There's a 24-hour virtual march happening on Facebook, I believe. There's the Courage Foundation's event, and then I'm hopping on Candles for Assange right now to see what the other 2 or 3 are, because there are quite a few around the world right now. And we're actually at 1 p.m. Eastern time is our normal Saturday show. So we're trying to get Susie Dawson to join us, as well as someone from Activism Munich, to basically have our own like hour-long hour-long version of that.
Munich. You
But so
freaking cracker.
yeah, so we have the 24-hour march hosted by Aussies for Assange. We have the Sydney group hosting one at 10:30 a.m. their time, which is the evening here on Friday. New Zealand's hosting one at 1900 hours. So my math is escaping me. I believe that's 7 o'clock. And then there is our Action for Assange one, the Courage Foundation one, and then Deepa's one over in the UK. So those are the total right now that it's showing, but I hope a couple more pop up. But I'm really looking forward to this weekend because it was when Julian first got taken to jail that I took it upon myself to do activism for Julian. And it was, I believe, a Wednesday or Thursday. I left after work on Friday to go to DC, and there were people out there, but I got there at about 10 o'clock at night, and the group had moved from DC up to New York City because it's only like a 4-hour drive from there. And then I didn't have the means to make it to New York at the time. I just didn't have the gas money to get to New York and then back home. So that's really where I just started thinking about everything that was going on and reflecting. And that was really where I realized that there wasn't enough or even really any at all on the ground activism for Julian, aside from, at least in the US, aside from the other groups like Code Pink, Veterans for Peace, but there wasn't a dedicated Free Assange group that tried to pull all of the smaller ones across the US together. Could you talk a little bit, Nat, about what got you just initially inspired to start acting for Julian specifically amongst all of the other issues in the world?
Well, for me, it was Chelsea Manning. I remember reading about her, and I didn't know about WikiLeaks or Assange before. So that's what took me. Also, I was starting to read a lot about Guantanamo. So I think that was my first real cause for activism, Guantanamo. So then I started to find out that WikiLeaks had published the Guantanamo files and everything. So it was like linked for me, but it was really through Chelsea Manning's leaks that really, like I found out about the situation. So it was like many, many years I was doing this on my own. And instantly I like recognized like Julian for like being a hero for me, because I couldn't honestly believe that there was someone as courageous and as amazing and that had sacrificed so much for us as him and as Chelsea did. So that was what took me to start activism for him and for her too.
What about you, Kimber? What was the big pivot point? Or Kendra, I'm so sorry. What was the big like pivot point? Because I know you'd been involved in a couple other things as well before this.
No, I mean, really it was seeing him dragged out of the embassy. I mean, that's what really kind of made me, I don't know, that was just such an awful day. You know, it was an awful couple days leading up to it. In some ways for me, I had found right before that the Unity for J vigils. So in some ways that's nice because, you know, other than a couple people here who definitely that's obviously grown since being active, but you know, you just feel like, gosh, does anybody know what's going on? So that was really great to find. I'm really glad that you guys are still, that you know, pick that back up. But that's when that started. And then really what made me start the group is just looking around for, I mean, I'd say it was really solidly for about like a month and a half and just not finding anything. I figured there'd be something already there with like 50 people that I would just join and, you know, get up and, you know, hold my sign and do whatever they were doing and just be a part of it. And that wasn't the case. So, you know, through finding a San Francisco group and then support with the, you know, Unity for J, that's how I got active and started doing it. And honestly, from just like really encouraging people, the first time I was going to go out there, I thought I was going to be by myself, you know, and I'm like, I remember writing a thing like, would this be bad for the, you know, movement, you know, still in this other kind of PR type of world. And, anyway, ridiculous. But so that's how that started. And, you know, it's just kind of grown from there with other people. And obviously always there's a core group that support more and really appreciate those guys here in Denver, you know, because it can get pretty heavy and it's just, you know, but then with that, trying to take that energy into more activism to get Julian free. You know, I mean, we can't forget that Chelsea's free now, which is wonderful. You know, I mean, it's amazing. I actually got a returned letter. That's one thing, that's a separate thing to ask about, but I got a returned letter because right after she, you know, the word spread that she had tried to commit suicide, you know, I wrote a letter that night and then I just recently got it back in the mail because, you know, she's not there anymore. So they're like, was released. I'm like, that's great. I'm going to keep this letter unopened here. Maybe someday I'll be able to give it to her. But yeah, so.
So we're going to be having our next guest hopping in here soon. Jason Bermas is going to be joining us in a few minutes to go through the news. If you could, Nat, where can everybody find you and give a little bit of your like final thoughts and then your hopes here for the rest of 2020?
Me? Okay. Yeah. Related to, well, I hope we can grow our group in Mexico. I still fight with the frustration of not having a lot of people supporting us or really committed to the cause. So I've never thought about quitting, of course, but it's sometimes sad that it's just like Renata and me or maybe a few people. So I would like to do more to have more people with us. And well, I just hope the situation in the world gets better because I'm really, really frustrated with this lockdown, and it hasn't been a lot of time here, but it's not like it's really sad to see everything like this happening.
And where can people find you if they'd be interested in following you or joining in on your team?
Okay, so it's Mexico con Julian in Facebook, and in Twitter it's my personal account. It's Nat, and I don't know how to say the line. Sorry.
Underscore.
Yes, sorry. NatRiveraScott. That's on Twitter, and that's all. That's all. This Twitter and Facebook.
And then where can everybody find you at, Kendra?
So you can find Denver Free Assange on Twitter at DNVFreeJA. And then we have a Proton mail that's Denver Action, 2 FreeJA at protonmail.com. So you can find us there. We are working on getting a Facebook page going, but we have to find somebody else in our group to manage that one. So as soon as we do that, then maybe on our next meeting, we will have that up as well.
Can I say something to Kendra? So Kendra, hi. I'm a
Hi.
big fan of your account in Twitter. So I'm a very, very big fan of yours. It's very nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too, and same here. We have to make sure that I know who you are now on the on the Twitter
I will
too.
tweet you now.
Okay, great, awesome.
Okay.
Cool. Well, I would like to thank both of you guys for joining us very much. We should have Bermas jumping in with us here in about a minute or two. So yeah, thank you guys again.
Thank you.
And feel free if either of you have any questions or you need advice on something or just some resources and things like that, please feel free to reach out to us because we're always happy to help support the groups on the ground.
Thank you so much. So have a nice night.
You too.
Thank you. Thank you,
Take
guys.
care, Nat. Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you, guys.
Bye.
All right. So, like Andrew was saying, Jason, yeah. So, guys, my power's out right now, so I have 2 candles. I may move the other one over here because you could barely see my face. But yeah, our power's out. But I'm using internet on my phone. My phone is kind of low on battery, but I'll just keep going until it is as far as I can this evening. So yes, we will be joined by Jason Bermas. Very excited to have him on. Now we will be getting into the reality winner documents and those leaks. He'll be on to discuss that with us. And again, for all of the best COVID-19 coverage, I point everybody to Jason Bermas. He has really been on top of this, covering this and doing an excellent job, and he'll be joining us shortly. So any statements, Steve, Andrew, before we transition to our news section of the evening?
Yeah, Jason needs to stop going live when I'm in the middle of a stream. It's basically where I'm at with that. No, I did just started talking to Whitney Webb this morning, which, by the way, if you're not already subscribed to my show, it's called Slow News Day. Go and do that after the vigil. I had a fantastic conversation with Serena Shim, award-winning independent journalist Whitney Webb. She is in the middle of yet another epic 4-part series. This time it's on the coronavirus and the number of different simulated exercises that have taken place over the last 20 years that all sort of, coincidentally have the exact same unelected oligarchs running it and the exact same organizations that are in charge of it. This one in particular that she's been writing about is called Dark Winter. It's an exercise that took place months before the September 11th attacks and was basically telegraphing everything that would happen with the upcoming anthrax scare. That I don't know if people remember this or not. If you're old as me, you will. But the day that September 11th happened, one of the Project for a New American Century neocons was on television making statements about, well, what if one of those planes was full of anthrax? And then, lo and behold, that particular PNAC goblin was part of the Dark Winter scenario, and it snowballs through the entire 21st century, where we've had these exercises take place right before a pandemic or near pandemic, and in more situations than not, it's a bioweapon, and that bioweapon is responsible for the reaction by the powers that be to institute a post-pandemic police state. So, I mean, it really is, it's one of those things where you couldn't script it any better because it's already been scripted by the most capable people to cause that kind of damage and that amount of loss of liberty that we're experiencing.
So it looks like Jason is now with us. So of course we have returning guest on with us, Jason Bermas. He has been really covering COVID-19, just doing a great job covering that crisis. And of course he is in New York, the hot spot for COVID-19. Before we get into the documents released by Reality Winner, Jason, I want you to just give us and our viewers a brief update, what's going on in your state, and just some of your thoughts on COVID-19 and where we're at this point in time. And thank you so much for coming on. And my power is out, so that's why it looks really strange. I have candles surrounding me.
Okay. And I'm sorry I have like this. I forget how to get it out of this mode. And I've been doing Zoom chats with like 4 or 5 generations of my fraternity every Wednesday now. That's why I haven't been on the last couple vigils, because I've just needed some sanity to talk to my friends in this very weird time. What is going on right now? Well, first of all, I want to talk about Assange just quick, because in my state, they decided it was okay, for instance, to let out a serial pedophile like Tekashi 6ix9ine. That's okay. We'll do that. Several other child rapists, and yet somebody like Assange is behind bars. I don't think that's acceptable. I think that unfortunately with the crackdown on YouTube, the fact, I got demonetized fully on Monday. I was not the only one. This seems like a concerted effort, that the writing is on the wall, right? Like even David Icke, who I totally and completely disagree with on some aspects of this issue, right? He now has 40 investigations going on because of what he said on London Real. I mean, is that real? Why are we wasting our time? Can the man not have an opinion? So it's just like, I think at this point, we're really beyond Orwell. They've got people locked into this mindset that a lockdown is the only way that this is going to go down. I think there are certain people that are fighting that aspect as much as possible, but we haven't seen anything yet. All these people that are out there, film your hospital and people aren't dying. That is the biggest bunch of just utter horse shit. And it's dangerous because, as I now have been reporting 2 days ago, Hart Island, by the way, is trending, but the National Guard is using, they're using Enterprise rent-a-cars to pick up dead bodies at houses. Guys, I want to make that very clear. The National Guard is picking up dead bodies in Enterprise rent-a-vans in my state, in Long Island, in Queens, in the Bronx. This is very fucking real. All right. My 2 nurse sources are people that I worked with for hundreds of hours side by side, that worked very hard to get through nursing school as they bartended 20, 30 hours a week. They have no reason to lie to me. And they're telling me that they're no longer going to intubate people who are 80 years of age or older. We now know, again, Hart Island is finally trending, but the mass graves are real. Okay. They would bury maybe 20, 25 people that didn't have a home somewhere here before. What's going on now is they are triple stacking bodies, and those are prisoners making $6 an hour in hazmat suits. I reported on this 2 days ago. It's just trending now on Twitter. So I want to make no qualms about it. We are in a very bizarre time, and I 100% believe at this point we've been attacked with a bioweapon. How deadly that bioweapon is, that's questionable. But how contagious it is and whether or not it will take you out with a comorbidity is no longer in doubt to me. And, I think that they've been playing with the numbers the other way. And that's very hard for people to accept. And unfortunately, as grim as that is, why are we not talking about the real solutions? That's why I had Shiva on for a full hour today. Why are we not talking about massive intravenous vitamin C treatment for these people instead of putting them on a ventilator, which from my 3 sources, one in Brooklyn, one in Queens, one at Stony Brook, are telling me once you're put on a fucking vent, you have a 70 to 90% chance of dying. I don't like those odds. So I would much rather have the intravenous vitamin C, the hydrocortisone shots that go along with it, maybe the hydroxychloroquine, maybe other antivirals. There are treatments out there. But if we put ourselves into a corner where we treat this like what they are treating it, a pneumonia, putting you on a ventilator, these mass deaths are going to continue. And, man, I don't want to be so grim, but we haven't even talked about the financial implications. You also can't print money out of fucking nowhere again and again and again and bail these things out. I mean, you look at enterprise. It's kind of off topic, but not really. Let's talk about the economic impact of this. In this Zoom meeting, I had a guy who works at Hertz, and he's like, it's the craziest thing. We had a fire on the lot, and it's basically all these cars are next to each other that never would have been, because usually they'd have 10, 15, 25 on a lot. Right now, they've got 45,000 cars. So that means sometimes there's 200, 300 on a lot. So one little accident leads to a big accident. They're not renting those out. So of course they're going to go with the military. If the military says we need your enterprise rent-a-van to go pick up bodies, I mean, that's some frightening shit. And the other thing is they're not taking people who die of cardiac arrest or any other thing, by the way, 18 years of age or older, to the hospital to try to revive you. You just get left there. And, I mean, I go on and on about the misnomers and numbers, but I'm telling people now, I am guaranteeing you, something is killing these people. All right. It is not a game. It is not a joke. It is not a hoax. The Film Your Hospital hoax is killing me because they don't understand. They're not talking to any nurses. It would be very easy to find one. These nurses, they're staffed by the dozens and the hundreds in some of these hospitals. And many of them are fearing for their jobs. You look at somebody like Dr. Siddell, who works in New York City, and talked about how this is not arts, how this is not something where if we use the ventilators like we are, we're not going to cost lives. He spoke out about that. It went viral. It was shortly after that video that my channel was demonetized, but people need to see this. And he's saying, listen, we need to treat this totally differently. And Arizona, New York City, again, very large place. Some people are using the vitamin C treatment. So guys, I got to tell you, just like I've been saying, have a plan, be prepared. Nobody's ready for this. I'm not ready to fucking hang back in my house for 6 months. I don't think anybody else is. I'm not ready to lose people I love, but prepare. Have food for your family, have a plan, and know what your limits are. I don't know what else to say because, again, what's the mainstream solution to this? Everybody's going to be forced to be tested, and then everybody's supposed to take a vaccine. Like, if that's not medical tyranny, I, for one, know I'm not down with it. And I can only imagine how middle America feels. And I'll be also honest, I'm in contact with my local law enforcement all the time. We see each other. And one of the very big concerns the sergeant here has, he's like, we're not going to go door to door. I'm not going to go door to door and enforce something like that. That's just not something that we're going to do. And I do believe there'll be a lot of law enforcement that goes against that. But at the same time, the fear is high right now. Anxiety is high. You already see panic. I don't know what the world holds, but I'll tell you what, the next 2 weeks are going to be far from Christmas, guys.
I think you're right on that. Thank you so much for that update and that recap. So I do want to transition to one of the first documents we're going to be looking at. Now, on our previous vigil on Tuesday, we had reality winner's mother, Billy Winner, on, as well as her sister, Brittany Winner. So if we could pull that up on the screen, that document, if we're able to do so.
It's happening.
Okay, so Steve is pulling that up for us. And Andrew,
and Jason, I just sent this to you too. This is the original set of documents that Reality Winner was found to have leaked to The Intercept back in I believe 2017.
Okay.
And so here's what's always just kind of tripped me out about these. Is that when you read them and you go through them, there is absolutely nothing in them that flat out proves there was any sort of quote unquote Russian interference. I want to start here right at the very first summary. And you can see who all they've CC'd in this. Which includes every Five Eyes country. That's what that FBEI there is in the court, and the FISA courts. And the summary states that Russian General Staff Main Intelligence Directorate actors executed cyber espionage operations against a named U.S. company in August 2016. They don't name the company, evidently to obtain information on elections-related software and hardware solutions. The actors likely used data obtained from that operation to create new email account and launch a voter registration-themed spear phishing operation. So when you go down and you look at it, there's no there. Look at the language that's being used. Cyber threat actors executed a spear phishing campaign from the email address blah on 24th August, targeting victims that included employees of a U.S. company, according to information that became available in April 2017. This campaign appeared to be designed to obtain the end user's email credentials by enticing victims to click on an embedded link with a spoofed Google email alert. And their conclusion on this very first supposition: 3 of the malicious emails were rejected by the email server with the response message that the victim's addresses did not exist. What's your opinion on this?
I mean, number one, it seems like they did everything and anything to push that narrative that Russia was involved. Now, I don't think they were planning on pushing that narrative because they weren't planning on not being able to rig the election for Hillary Clinton. They thought with all their Diebold machines, they were going to be able to do it. And they almost did. I still, to this day, do not believe that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. I think if you went back there and you scrutinized it, it would be a whole different story. So I think you take somebody like Reality Winner, right, who probably, was doing illegal things and leaking stuff, and you kind of craft your own narrative around it, right? And you classify what you need to, and then you politicize it around Russia. It seems like they did that all the way around. I mean, if you look at even the figurehead of Mueller with the Mueller report, what was he? He was just a name. He was just a name to attach to Russia bad, Assange agent of Russia, crush. That's it. Once he was put on the stand, he was a babbling idiot. So to me, again, man, you want to talk about intelligence networks. This is some kind of I led with. But what you're really going to see right now is that you're going to see leaked reports of certain people warning everybody about this in November. All right. And they're going to be low-level, honest people in the FBI, in the CIA, in these sub-organizations. And they're going to have been briefings. And just like, when you saw like bin Laden imminent threat before 9/11, just like you saw Amalgam Virgo, yeah, Event 201 was visible, but you're going to see a lot more of that. And what people have to keep in mind is that I would say the predator class at the top always kind of knows what narrative is real and the one that they're crafting. And just like now, they're crafting basically a narrative, in my opinion, to try to put all the blame on Trump and his administration, when in fact his insiders were probably telling him there was no big deal. And people like Pompeo and Fauci, all those fucking guys knew, every single one of them.
I want to go back to the doc here for a second, because this next comment, and this underscores everything that we're talking about in terms of what happened to Reality Winner. It's really the tragedy of Reality Winner at this point, because it appears that she's serving the longest sentence out of any whistleblower that has ever been tried and convicted, simply for the potential of making the federal government look stupid. Quote, the actors were probably trying to obtain information associated with election-related hardware and software applications. It is unknown whether the aforementioned spear phishing deployment successfully compromised all the intended victims and what potential data from the victim could have been exfiltrated. However, based on subsequent targeting, it was likely that at least one account was compromised.
The part that really breaks my heart about Reality Winner's situation is the fact that, like, she did what she thought was right, like any other whistleblower would, at least from my perspective, at least. where she found this information. She thought that it was relevant based on the story that was being spun in the media, released this information to show, hey, we do have something. Like, there is this thing that is out there that says Russia was trying to do something with our election. But because it didn't fit into the larger Russiagate narrative, because it didn't fit into the they helped Donald Trump and was more just a generality about what, or potentially what, wasn't happening with a Russian intelligence actor at that directorate, she gets completely destroyed. But then you see people like Eric Caramello Bar, as Jason so beautifully puts it, release information that shows not even any criminal misconduct or anything, but is just Trump bad, and he is protected by the largest institution. It's in halls of power where they aren't even allowed to say his name, and if we say it on YouTube, this video will get removed. So I think that a lot of it has to come down to, she believed in what she was doing because the media, the larger media institutions, were proliferating this propaganda, and it turns into her being in jail now for almost 1,040 days, 1,050 days because of that. And because she stepped forward herself to say, hey, we have this information that says something may or may not have happened, that someone may or may not have been compromised. And instead of having it just be objectively viewed, because at the time, The Intercept was also pushing back against Russiagate, Jimmy Dore, Kyle Kulinski, and a bunch of other people. And instead of having this document viewed through independent media in an objective manner, it was put out through The Intercept as a Russiagate is real, Trump is bad, and reality wasn't protected by the person that she entrusted this information to. And to me, that's just the most heartbreaking part, is she believed she was doing the right thing when this information came forward because of all of the propaganda, but it turned into her getting the largest sentence of any whistleblower.
Well, I agree. They use dupes all the time. I mean, that's kind of the game of the patsy, and then it plays into their narrative because this is someone that was supposed to expose that, and then you get to blame, Trump double hard when the conviction comes out. So, I agree with you, man. I think the bottom line is that so many people are so tuned out that, let's take a look at, again, the current situation. Last week, there were people that believed their kids were going back to school this year. There are still some people that believe that in the country. Like, they believe that. And I'm trying to tell everybody, hey man, we're on a pretty obvious script. All you need to do is actually listen to one of these full press conference and not spend 3 minutes with Rachel Maddow yapping her fucking teeth off and then some bit clips in between. All right. And especially when we talk about a situation where not only reality winner is put in that box, but that, I mean, Julian Assange, a non-citizen, is not only put into that box, but they have to literally make things up into putting him into a cyber terrorist, like literally new laws that if you're not a hacker, if you didn't put the password in yourself, you're still the cyber terrorist. And then to take that language even further this year in that counterintelligence document. And now you're what? You're a leaktivist. You're a hacktivist. You're somebody who is an ideological person. And you're put in this, you're a public disclosure organization. Think about that. A public disclosure organization. If you took those 3 words and you put them in any free speech scenario in the last 300 plus years in any culture that spoke English, they would think that's journalism, not high treason.
And people don't even know that is something that our government's doing. Like, they don't even know that leaktivists, hacktivists, and public disclosure organizations are listed next to Al Qaeda now. And then what does that make our mainstream media? What does that make the people that we watch on YouTube? Like, we're not putting them together, but are we going to see a time where Lee Camp, Jimmy Dore, and James Corbett are dragged out of their houses for publicly disclosing information, while Rachel Maddow uncritically repeats talking points of the military-industrial complex? because
As
they're not.
a guy from I believe it was the CDC on her show. I didn't see it. Whitney Webb was going off on it this morning when she was on the show. But Maddow's guest last night was talking about the need to go drag people out of their homes who may be sick with COVID-19. And this is why we need the app that will tell you, that will read your cough or read your breath and diagnose you via app, so that then either the military or the police can come to your house and drag you out and put you into a quarantine camp. And people that are watching that are going to go, oh, that's such a good idea. Like, her audience has just been programmed to never question the person on the opposite side of her desk. And they're going to go, oh, yeah, no, keep us safe. We need to do that. Meanwhile, the same people that have sat through and orchestrated and written all of these post-pandemic police state transition exercises are tied to the companies that are manufacturing not one, but 4 different cures. Like, this really is the real-time prequel to V for Vendetta. It really is. I don't remember the movie or not, but everybody that was high up in the party that was being targeted by the Guy V all had stock or all worked for the same pharmaceutical company that made a fuck ton of money by marketing the cure. That's what we're doing right now. That is exactly what's taking place.
Well, I think it goes, unfortunately, even beyond that. I think these guys are consolidating power in ways that we can't even imagine at this point. Because, again, you can't print money out of nowhere on this. And why aren't they pushing something like vitamin C, stem cells? Right now, they're also doing aerosolized nitric oxide. Now, I know everybody's like, oh, boner juice. But nitric oxide was kind of like the supplement that came out after creatine. I remember using it. And it's great because it gets your cardiovascular system going. It opens your vascular system. So instead of putting somebody on a ventilator and giving them that chance where, it's 70 to 90% over, why not put them on a BiPAP or CPAP machine where that aerosolized NO2 is part of that oxygen? These are real treatments that they're actually doing that are not being publicized. And I think stem cells, again, they've never, ever promoted stem cells in this country, yet mesenchymal stem cells have been proven in studies to work against this. So if it doesn't have Johnson & Johnson's stamp of approval or Bill Gates' stamp of approval, it doesn't seem to be a solution that's being pushed by this establishment. And, it creeps me out that establishment of Johnson & Johnson, the World Health Organization, the World Bank, Johns Hopkins University, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Marriott Hotel System, the CDC in China, the CDC in the United States, ANZ Bank are all sitting at a table at fucking Davos in October 2019, wargaming for several hours a novel coronavirus outbreak from a pig that takes 65 million lives. I just want to say out of the gates, fuck you guys. No one elected you. No one asked your fucking opinions. And the fact that we have put power into what the World Health Organization is saying when they stand by China, who says they only had 3,000 fucking deaths, is disgusting. It's fucking disgusting. Sorry.
So no, you're fine.
I was trying to agree with you. I had muted myself. No, you couldn't be more right about that. We're every time there's a crisis, be it financial or health or natural disaster, it's a way for the predator class to further consolidate their wealth. And we're now seeing not only a financial and economic disaster, but a health disaster. And almost every summer for the last 10 years has been hotter than the one before that. We're going to have a very hot summer full of angry, unemployed, hungry people.
A hot summer? Fucking Tony Fauci, that fucking un-American, unhuman, transhuman piece of shit, is saying, I don't think we should ever shake hands ever again. What kind of an Orwellian nightmare would I be living in where I'm not allowed to be a human being? Guys, I'm going on right now probably about a month and a half without my ability to go to a fucking local bar, get a beer, and talk to an attractive young lady from less than 6 feet away. What in the world do they think more and more people are going to do over the next few weeks and months if they keep this lockdown going?
I personally
feel like
think
this
the entire thing.
What's that?
I think this entire thing is designed to create civil unrest and to piss people off at this point. Because not even with the $4.2 trillion bailout that they gave to the biggest banks, but like today, the governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, was giving a press conference, and someone asked him, well, why have you guys taken any steps to improve the unemployment system so more people can file, and more people can get through, and more people can actually start receiving this money? And he stands there like a deer in headlights for a good 10 or 15 seconds, and he goes, I'm going to defer the question to this guy, but first, I just want to let you know that we're trying to hire people to take a look at it right now. And then passes the question off to some guy that literally dances for the next 2.5 minutes and says, no, we'll get the money to people that need the money for applying for unemployment. You just have to be patient while we get it working. And then just cuts to the next question. Like they're trying, because this was actually part of the script that was in, I don't think it was in Event 201 as much, but it was in Dark Winter and others, where they talk about the civil unrest, and especially Lockstep, about essentially manufacturing it in a specific direction to be able to respond to it in a specific way. And that's the problem reaction solution that we all know so well in the sphere of truth tellers, where they try to make a specific policy passed or get a specific thing instituted. So they create a specific issue to get a specific response so they can bring that policy into play. And the best example is 9/11 and the Patriot Act, because that was written in the late 90s by Joe Biden and others. The towers come down, and then people are terrified and want some response. So the Patriot Act gets on there, and then the people are still pissed. So we get to go into 2 wars, and then years later, we now have to take our shoes off at an airport because of that. And that's one of those long-term things that people never even thought would happen.
And scanned by radiation. You know what I mean? And now let's take it to the next step. You think that the biometrics that they've implemented in Florida and other places where they're doing the face scans won't be mandatory after this? Especially if they get their little way with the vaccines, or you had the antibody or whatever little thing they said. I just want to go back to how important this is. But again, people need to read this document. Above me, here it is. It says other state adversaries such as Cuba, Iran, and North Korea. Iran, who we have the most inhumane sanctions against right now during this crisis, by the way. Non-state actors such as Lebanese Hezbollah, ISIS, and Al-Qaeda, as well as transnational criminal organizations. Meanwhile, by the way, in New York, guys, joke's on them. They just made money laundering for terrorism a bailable offense. And since we have zero bail, you can just walk away. Anyway, so whatever, transnational criminal organizations. And ideologically motivated entities, my favorites, such as hacktivists, leaktivists, and again, that 3-letter word, public disclosure organizations, also pose significant threats. We live in 1984 in 2020, gentlemen.
Yeah, I believe I said it when you were on the day that you got demonetized and I had you on my show. But Orwell really undersold us. He really did. We already have the drones flying over parks in New York City telling people to maintain social distancing. And thank you for your cooperation. And this is for your safety. We know that the Chula Vista Police Department bought drones for the exact same purposes. We are, thanks to Peter Thiel and Palantir, now have apps in several different countries that literally read your biometrics and tell you whether or not you're sick. And Elizabeth Mueller is in my chat right now, and she just posited that international trade deals are going to be a consequence of the end result of the COVID lockdown. And if you remember, the TPP would allow corporations to sue governments if the governments passed regulations that cut into their profits. You remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Remember that little tidbit?
Yeah, I do. And remember, we're talking about just national interests at this point. We're not talking about national security. We're not talking about the interests of the United States of America, the Constitution, the people. And that's one of the things that was really disturbing to me again and again in that Event 201 exercise is there wasn't a damn one of them up there that was shy about the fact they didn't give a fuck about the individual. They weren't worried about grandma, grandpa, little Timmy, Joey, mommy, daddy, anybody, except for their profits and keeping the business chains moving and making sure that the World Bank was invested in the infrastructure of the nations that were affected most. They were worried about that. That's something they were worried about. So they want more powerful for global government. I think they're going to try to get it. I think they're going to try to roll out a vaccine. Again, guys, I don't even want to tell you what I think is going to happen by the next time we talk. I think by the next time we talk, unfortunately, they're going to be rolling out 1,500 to 2,000 bodies a day from New York State, no problem, maybe even the city alone. And when it starts hitting other towns, and it is middle America, when it starts to get away from the East Coast a little more, and I believe it will, and the lockdown doesn't end May 1st, and it doesn't end June 1st, even before May 1st, I think by the end of this month, there's going to be some kind of a panic that that I can't predict. And I don't like that prediction that literally I can't predict what kind of panic may ensue by the, 25th, 26th, maybe at the latest just before May 1st. I don't know, but I can tell you right now that we're going to be in a very different world than we are now, 2 weeks from now. And we're already in a very different world than when I was sitting there hanging out with you guys for the first time. Thank God I got that experience out just a little over a month ago,
Yeah, I just looked down the corner of my computer at the day. It was like 5.5 weeks ago that we were sitting at a restaurant making fun of feminist baby. Like it was just
yes.
Which, by the way, feminist baby is hilarious. If you're ever at a bookshop, if we're ever allowed to go to a bookshop again, and you happen upon a book called Feminist Baby, I want you to read it and think fondly of me and Jason sitting at the end of this bar, cracking up over it. That was a beautiful moment. It was.
And anybody who thinks that it was this one right here, I believe, but there was a couple feminist babies. This was the he's a feminist too. And I wish we were making this up, but that's the kind of thing that you get in a DC coffee shop, folks. It's not Oklahoma, I'll tell you that.
They had plush Ruth Bader Ginsburg dolls at the same bar that had a mural with Angela Davis on it. It was the weirdest fucking thing.
And dedication to the Guantanamo Bay employee or the Guantanamo Bay prisoners on their windows, with employees not understanding where we found that information out about. But to transition a little bit back to the topic on hand, there was a friend of the show, Mo, released a Sputnik article yesterday going over the recent case with Julian and how the defense is basically now having to appeal something that I think most people will find disgusting. Judge Vanessa Bracer previously ruled that the identity of Julian Assange's partner, who wouldn't be anonymized since she was filed in the witness statement in support of the WikiLeaks founder's emergency bail application on March 25th. That decision is now due to be appealed. Basically, a week ago, Julian Assange, his attorneys filed for a bail application, trying to get him out amidst the COVID-19 epidemic. the Vanessa Bratster said the epidemic is not bad enough, essentially, that there's not enough going on, and that she was going to defer to the National Health Institute for any rulings on prisoners. And the later on, right, this came out, I believe it was Tuesday when all of this took place, this next hearing, that now the court is trying to release the names of Julian Assange's partner as well as his children for the media to then do what they please with. And I'm a free speech absolutist. Like, I don't think that this should even really be argued in court, essentially, but also privacy and the anonymity of an individual is very important. But what they're doing in court now is literally holding the name of Julian's children and his partner over their heads and saying, hey, you guys tried to get this bail application in the middle of a pandemic, so now we're putting her name out there. So it's ludicrous. It's absolutely insane that the court has the power to literally dangle this person above the defense. And they are appealing this decision to release it. But I believe that on the 24th, if their appeal gets denied or isn't even heard, that they will just allow this and release this information into the public record of the court system.
So the way that it's going to roll out is the hearing was on the 7th. When Julian's defense said, well, no, we're going to file an appeal, that appeal process is supposed to take 14 days. Vanessa Bratster said you get 7. So on the 14th of April, they will have to submit it and a ruling will be made. Now, when I talked to Mo earlier this morning, he did say that Vanessa Bratster will not be the magistrate that makes this ruling. The appeal is going to a different judge in a higher court. So it's possible that the judge will be a little less, more openly pro State Department than Vanessa Bratster. But the fact that we even have to talk about this is just, it's disgusting. And Mo's point, when I was like, well, obviously his partner and children are going to be, subject to targeted harassing. Mo's point was the State Department already knows who she is. The intelligence communities already know who she is. The British government, their police, their intelligence agencies, they already know who she is. They already know who the children's names are. The only way that they would come under more harassment than they already have is if a random citizen took it on himself to violate a lockdown order to go and harass them. I was like, well, don't you want to stop that?
and stop that. First of all, maybe, but it wouldn't just be a random citizen. There could be journalists that want to make a name for themselves. Let's be honest. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. Even people that are pro Julian Assange may want to get at least his partner's insight, right? That would definitely be a possibility. But then you have those gotcha journalists that want, tell us about how your husband or whatever is a Russian agent. So, you have that moment as well. I would think at least the children deserve anonymity. And any argument otherwise is crazy to me. Children should have the right to remain anonymous if they like before they're 18, until they're 18.
And I don't believe that children have the same protections that children do here in the UK. I don't know, because here you at least have to obtain consent to report a minor's name, especially if they're involved in any sort of legal process. But I don't think that the same rule applies in the UK. So these kids would be fair game.
That's insanity to me. That is total insanity. Gentlemen.
Well, real quick, before you leave, because there's a follow-up to this, right?
Okay. All right.
So Craig Murray, and you'll find this fucking awesome if you can get this pulled up, the craigmurray.org article, Josh. Craig Murray actually is a wonderful investigative journalist, and he had a video that he was sitting on that no one knew about, and it is of Vanessa Bratster in high school doing a sing-along, or in like a high school play. If you are a meme artist, if you are a comedian, if you are someone that enjoys satire, Mrs. Assange asked for people to transform this video. So if you could play that for us, Josh, that would be awesome, because this is something that I personally think is kind of funny that it came out this way and in this mode, and that, quite frankly, this is one of the only things about Vanessa Baraster's life that the entire world knows at this point, is this video, because
I
she
got
has
it for
been
you.
okay.
There's no business
Wait,
like
am I wrong on
no
this? Is this-
business like no business I know.
Or is this real?
It's real.
Everything about it is appealing. Everything that traffic will allow. Nowhere could you get that happy
Wow, that is
feeling
real.
when you're feeling that extra like show people, they smile.
Well, that is a bizarre way to exit my show, gentlemen. I'm not gonna lie.
I knew you would enjoy that, so I wanted to share that with you. If anyone out there has wonderful video editing skills or terrible video editing skills, please have fun with that video, proliferate it, because at this point, it's one of the only ways that we have to show her how revealing information about someone's personal life can be embarrassing and damaging, when it has no business even being in the public spectrum. And this is something that Miss Assange has asked comedians to pick up personally. So I really hope that there's people out there that will heed this call to action.
All right, brother. And guys, Action for Assange, the number 4. Is the website, and obviously you guys know they do great work. All right, guys, hopefully I'll see you next week. All right.
Absolutely.
All right, Jay.
All right, later on, guys. So ladies,
So as Jason's leaving here, we're actually having issues where Taylor can't hop back in right now, but I want to give a little shout out for him real quick. He has a GoFundMe. It's this guy right here. If you could, give him a donation. He's been completely, utterly demonetized on YouTube. And we don't have a current GoFundMe up. We don't have any way to get out to get people together to protest right now. And another person as well that could really use some support is Liz Muller. I don't have her GoFundMe up right now. I will find it and put it in our live chat for everybody here in a second, or if she's still in the group with us. So if she could link that in there, that would be awesome too. Okay,
I got it.
cool. But that
Pull-
takes us
Pull
into
her
our,
GoFundMe up right now. And I will make sure that this link gets into the chat.
okay, cool. Yeah, if we want to keep going through this here, because there's a lot of stuff to cover. But before we jump into the next article, I want to give a little plug that we haven't done for a while about encryption. It is not a end all be all in privacy, but it does help take another little step. And basically, the general theory behind encryption is it doesn't allow your messages to just get caught up in mass surveillance. So the dragnets that exist that just pick up everyone's phone calls, text messages, emails, Zoom chats, and things like that. The way to kind of stand against that is using encrypted messaging apps, encrypted browsers, encrypted video conferences, and constantly changing them up. Like there's Wire, there's Signal, and there is Telegram that I know about that are relatively decent. Yeah, Matrix, Riot for text messaging and like text communication, as well as a couple of them might allow you to do phone calls and voice calls with one person in there. But then also for video conferencing, because everyone's moving to online forums right now. Jitsi is a really good one. It's the one that we use generally for the stream and for our personal meetings when we discuss things behind the scenes. So if you could, and you're interested in doing it, get those applications and start using them. And the other thing is pressure other content creators through direct messaging and things like that to start talking more about encryption and about the privacy issues. If we could, real quick, could we talk about the Earn It Act? I know it's later down in the show, but we've kind of been jumping around. Cool. So I don't know if everybody's aware, but the multi-trillion-dollar bailout for the banks isn't the only terrible piece of legislation going on right now. The Earn It Act, which has not been passed yet, will essentially destroy any type of end-to-end encryption. It will destroy the internet as we know it, more so than even the elimination of net neutrality. The long of it is, it basically passes the information to the government first to allow them to say if it should or shouldn't be transmitted, if I believe that properly, or should and shouldn't be posted. And if they find websites in violation of this that will still allow non-approved content to go up, those websites will still get hit and be sued by the government or some other entity to get those pieces of information taken down. So this is more than a direct assault on free speech. This is a direct assault on the very little bit of privacy that we have left in existence right now. And it's not something that's being talked about because the larger issues around the coronavirus are really drowning this out. But this, more than anything, is one of the things that is essentially the Patriot Act of the coronavirus madness. And I hope that I could.
Let's highlight real quick what's up on screen right now, where it says the bill also violates the Constitution's protection for free speech and privacy, as Congress considers the Earn It Act, or Earn IT Act, which would require online platforms to comply with to be determined. You just scrolled away from where I was reading. Oh, there we go. To be determined best practices in order to preserve certain protections from criminal and civil liability for user-generated content under Section 230. It is important to highlight the bill's First and Fourth Amendment problems. I want to go back and read just one part of that real quick again. It would require online platforms to comply with to be determined best practices. Now, what does that mean? I had Sean O'Brien on Slow News Day. It seems like last week, but it could have been this week. I don't know. It's all sort of running together. But what it essentially means is that Google, Facebook, Twitter, large tech monopolies and larger platforms are going to be able to upfront tell you what is and isn't allowable speech. And if any user violates that, they're gone. If you violate that as a small channel or as a small website, if you violate whatever practices Google set forth, you're gone. Your platform is gone. And they're consulting right now with Alphabet Inc. and the Atlantic Council and all of the exact same players that have been going just apeshit censoring the internet for the last few years on what these best practices are.
And that term best practices will become a legal term. That's not like in the footnote of the bill or like, hey, this part we're calling the best practice. It is the new legal wording of best practices in regards to internet content will come into existence. And with everyone's hair on fire about all of the other things that are going on around the coronavirus, this can't be ignored. And I really hope that other content creators can pick this up and start talking about it, because the moment that this passes, the internet as we know it no longer exists. Because anyone in violation of that, not even murky, but just blatantly obscure term best practices, can be removed at the drop of a hat and then sued out of further existence.
Yeah, and that's where we're at in the land of the free.
At least we can still be brave as fuck, because right now there's a greater impact for one person to go out and do activism. This is something we've talked about since the very first stream. The idea of a decentralized single person activist movement where it is you going out into your community to be the one lone voice for Julian Assange or for insert issue. And Steve talked about it a little bit earlier, and we'll bring it up again. There's a lot of groups that have kind of figured out, like, we can drive cars and still stay separated. So they started doing protests in vehicles where they will put banners on the side of their car and drive around and honk and be pretty slow as they roll down the street so people come out and look and listen. I'd like to add another step to that, if at all possible, which would be microphones and little shitty speakers in the back of your car while you're doing this, talking about why you're driving around and what your activism is. And you can still go out, you can distribute flyers amongst your community. Please wear gloves and masks if you choose to do so, if you choose to put a letter in someone's door. You can still go out and hang flyers from telephone poles, and everyone literally in your neighborhood that is home will see them on those poles. In the UK right now, you're allowed one trip out of your house a day to break the house arrest and monotony. Use that time to get some exercise doing arm stretchies to put up posters on telephone poles. So when the other people leave their house once a day, they see this information that's getting out there. Because we went from having a 10,000 person protest in the streets of London just after facial recognition was rolled out to a global lockdown less than a month later. Less than 3 weeks later, really, with the way that all this kind of escalated in this way and in this form. So be the one weird person. Be the one person in your community that cares enough to stand up to literally make noise so people look out their windows and see you driving past. And it doesn't matter necessarily what the issue's for. I would love people to go out and do that for Julian Assange. But even if it's to inform people about the Internet Act, to inform people about the $1 trillion bailout, to call for rent strikes and general strikes, do that. Go out and be the one person protest for whatever issue you find most important and relevant in that time and space.
And yeah, if we all turn ourselves into public disclosure outlets, they can't round up every single one of us. If we all turn ourselves into information activists, then they can't stop us. 3.5% of the population is what it takes to affect change through the government. Right now, at this moment, 16.8 million people have filed for unemployment insurance. That is more than 3.5% of the population. If the people who are out of work now and the people who are going to be out of work in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month from now can come together on terms for a general strike, we are already there just by virtue of what has been done to us. Think about that and then apply it, please. And contact us, reach out to us if you need a hand or you need some, somebody to help promote you or somebody to give you advice on how best to go about it. We're available.
Because we don't want anyone inherently going out and breaking the law. Like, that's not the point or the plan. And we don't want anyone spreading this disease or becoming infected in and of themselves. But there is still a need for individuals to act in a responsible way to proliferate information. And before, it was going to community events and shaking hands and passing out flyers. And it just has transformed into, instead of passing out flyers, you put a banner on the side of your car, use painter's tape or tuck it up in a window and drive around and honk. And that's just the evolution of the world that we've been thrust into at this point. And it's something that we can still embrace it. We can think more quickly than the way that they're trying to roll out this plan, because what we're seeing right now is the slow roll into tyranny. And I don't remember which director said it, but there was one guy that said, we will know our disinformation campaigns are complete when every American believes something different. And that is
William Casey was the CIA director in 1981 who said, we will know our disinformation campaign is complete when nothing the American public believes is true.
And that's where we're at, because we don't even have honest, actual, real information about a global pandemic that's ravaging us. You have people arguing from the spectrum of this is a complete hoax and no one's dying, to, oh my God, the whole world is going to burn and we're going to see millions upon millions of people dead and the Georgia Guidestones are coming true. So it's, and that's the truth. And then it even filters up to be, no, this isn't a virus, this is just 5G. And so everyone at this point is disinformed and is misinformed intentionally by a government that thrives in chaos, because in that moment, it can step up and pretend to be a hero while it strips everyone's rights away. Because right now, we are all Julian Assange. We are all on house arrest in solitary confinement, so to speak. We still have the internet. We still have access to the outside world. We still have the phones that are tracking us constantly. But I mean, how much longer until that's gone?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And in every single one of those scenarios, every single one of those simulated events, there's a segment in their script there for turning off the internet or making the internet unavailable to certain segments of the population, or just controlling what shows or what websites people have access to. So that's coming. That's, I don't want to say it's an inevitability, but it is certainly not out of the scope of immediate possibility. And again, that's why I had Sean on the show. I was trying to find some ways where we could keep interneting, during the shutdown. And basically what it amounts to is mesh networks, and then we're all going low tech, and we're going to at some point decide whether or not it's worth the personal risk to ourselves to violate a curfew to go flyer a town. I am not advocating that you do that. I am advocating that you have a conversation with yourself and decide whether or not it's worth the risk to you personally. Ham radio was another idea that we were talking about as well. Jared and Elizabeth Beck, who were on last week, were on my show on Sunday and expressed interest in trying to figure that out. I don't know whether or not Drufus got any of that information over to Sleepy Josh, but I'm having an after show meeting on camera right now. At any rate, we have some more items of news to cover. If we could, and Josh, you're gonna have to tell me if I need to pull up the article about the members of parliament or not that was out of the Washington Times. Okay, I mean, I've got it. I can pull it up right now.
Yeah, what we have on screen right now, just to go over it real quick. If you could switch back to Mrs. Assange's tweet, because we'll just go over that real quick because it was there. She's put out essentially a tool that's built on the assangecampaign.org.au website for sending emails to members of the Australian Parliament. Super easy. You can just punch in your information if you are in Australia, or if you can figure out an address in Australia, to send them a letter about the torture of Julian Assange and demand that they fight for his freedom. And there's been some MPs that have done a great job at standing up for Julian out there, but at this point, it is not enough. So if we could we pull up those MP statements now?
I'm going to go to the Times article here that kind of outlines it if my computer stops being done with me. Here we go. British officials were pressed Thursday to release WikiLeaks publisher Julian Assange from a London prison where fellow inmates have recently contracted the novel coronavirus. A pair of politicians from Mr. Assange's native Australia raised grave concerns about keeping him jailed during the coronavirus pandemic and proposed placing him in home detention. Rather than remaining at Belmarsh, he should be freed and fitted with an ankle monitor, the co-chairs of the Australian Bring Julian Assange Home parliamentary group said. Andrew Wilkie and George Christensen, the Australian parliamentarians who made the request, reason that Mr. Assange meets all of the criteria that should qualify for his release per the guidance of groups, including the World Health Organization and the UK Prison Officers Association. Mr. Assange is a non-violent remand prisoner with no history of harm to the community. He is not convicted and is thus entitled to the presumption of innocence, they wrote in letters sent to Bob Neill, the chair of the UK Commons Justice Committee, and Robert Buckland, the British Lord Chancellor and Secretary for Justice. They also said that Mr. Assange's doctors have warned that he has a pre-existing chronic lung condition that makes him particularly susceptible to COVID-19, the infectious respiratory disease caused by the new coronavirus, adding that he is at high risk from dying if he becomes infected. Multiple cases of COVID have been confirmed within the Belmarsh prison, and normal activities inside the facility have accordingly been suspended. Mr. Assange is in poor mental health due to spending much time in solitary confinement over recent years, and prison COVID-19 lockdown measures are further exacerbating his mental health. And this is absolutely true. We found out today, Christine Assange tweeted out that Julian is under lockdown for 23 and a half hours a day. And then when he gets to exercise for his 30 fucking minutes, he's surrounded by other prisoners. There's no social distancing. There's no maintaining 6 or 10 feet of separation. They're all out in the same little concrete square, marching around for a half an hour before they get shut back in fucking solitary again. It is barbarism.
And his case is still going on. Just to add that to it, May 18th, they're still going to have his trial. May 18th to June 5th, the second part of the extradition hearing will still continue. A lot of the guests, I was informed on Tuesday, will join via video link. The witnesses, I won't call them guests, for the ones that can't make it and can't travel out there. But also on April 24th, there is another case management hearing, I believe, for Julian's case, and that may be where they talk about the decision to reveal the information in regards to his significant other, because I think that is the date that it is set to be able to come out or not come out, depending on what the decision is.
Yeah, I know they have to have their appeal in by the 14th. And again, the appeal is going through a different judge in a different court. So whether or not they're allowed to do it, that decision won't be made by Vanessa Barrester. It'll be made by a different magistrate. They may announce it on the case management hearing on the 24th, or they may have a separate announcement to go along with it. Mo didn't know when I was talking to him earlier today.
Okay. Do you have that clip from where you were talking to Mo? Can we get that pulled up?
Yeah, I can pull it up here real quick. Give me just a moment.
So there was something that came out in passing during Julian Assange's latest case management hearing on Tuesday that I read through Mo's tweets because he literally live tweeted the entire thing from the press room, essentially, like their viewing room. But it hadn't really like struck me or stuck with me. But I saw Josh sent it to me, a CN Live thing where they talked about it. And someone within the court system itself, it was maybe like one of the guards or a staff member there. It's still not entirely clear, I don't believe, who it was, but said that Julian Assange is unwell right now. And it's scary. Like the simple fact that he is sitting in jail. We know he's susceptible to this disease. We know that this disease is in his jail. He has been denied bail because this pandemic wasn't bad enough. And then they turn the bail hearing into a way to threaten the release of his partner and children's name to the public. It's crazy the way that this has been allowed to proceed. And this is at the same time where the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, in the UK is probably getting put on a ventilator inside of an ER right now because of his deteriorating health from having this virus. Is he officially out of the ICU now? Okay. Well, best to him and his family, I guess.
I'm pretty sure it's mostly in the right spot. And I want everyone to take notice that I get cleaned up for these vigils. How are you, brother?
I'm doing okay, not too bad. Just took a walk down to the park to see what things were like over there, and then was being questioned by two of the park people there as to why I was taking pictures. Well, one of them, the other one, he knows me from yesterday when I went last night. So I think they're just concerned because they're concerned that loads of people are taking photographs, and then they're afraid if they're spreading information that could foment problems for them. They feel that people are being unfairly represented while sitting in the park. So, but that's a separate issue. Yes, you're right. I was at the hearing, the case management hearing, on the 7th of April at Westminster Magistrates Court. Julian Assange did not appear via video link. In fact, the guards seemed surprised when the court clerks had said Julian Assange, and then you could see the guards like, who? Oh, is he supposed to be here? Don't think he's supposed to be here. So that was at first we thought that was just a mix-up, and then eventually the judge comes in, and I remember I'm sitting there furiously typing, like live tweeting, which is I find quite difficult actually. People are speaking at normal pace and you're trying to get exactly what people say. You have to be careful not to put something into quotation marks unless it's exactly right? Because quotation marks mean it's verbatim. So I try to avoid quotation marks unless I get it exactly. I know for a fact it's what was said. And as I'm typing away things and tweeting out in a thread, at one point he says, he told the judge, he's not being presented because he's feeling unwell. So I tweeted that out. But I remember thinking, even at the time, where did he hear that from? Because the security guards didn't say anything. So when I did my write-up on that hearing, and I covered the two main points of the hearing. I can't recall if you and I discussed it, but you probably did with Tarek anyway, Tarek Haddad. I left that out of the article because you don't want people freaking out, which I've already seen happen on Twitter. Oh, yeah. Right? I mean, I forgot it. I even tweeted it. I probably had I got a couple dozen tweets by the end of the thread, right? And even more material that's just sitting in a Word document. So you don't want people overly extrapolating from that, and people start getting overly agitated. And then one of my colleagues, he's with the Australian Associated Press, Marty Silk. He didn't hear it said, right? So I know people are accusing him of hiding information. And it's I don't know if people understand what it's like when you're in real time hearing information, trying to put out information on Twitter, trying to decide what you're going to put out. This is, and different people are speaking sometimes at the same time. It's not an easy process, right? He heard things that I didn't hear, right? He heard Fitzgerald, the defense lawyer, say something. But I can confirm now, having spoken to two other journalists who were also at the hearing via telephone, so they were listening to the hearing. I spoke to two other journalists. I spoke to one other journalist who confirmed that they also heard that, and that a separate journalist had contacted them saying, "Did you hear that?" So I can't mention their names, but because I've been reaching out, because people have been saying, "Can you get anyone else to confirm?" And I can confirm here, this is breaking. Right, this is the first outlet that is going to have this information. I did finally reach out to the court officer. Woohoo! And the court officer did, because I said, where did you get that by any chance? And they're all incredibly busy, as you can imagine. So it's I didn't want to overburden them with questions. They were doing a favor, quite frankly, anyway. By anyway, and so I said, I recall you telling the judge that Julian Assange didn't show up because he's feeling unwell. Where exactly did he get that information? Because I didn't hear the prison guard say that. And he said, this is what he said, I can get the exact quote, but he basically said that information came from his legal team. Right? Now,
I'm going to go ahead and stop it right there because that's the long and short of the news. But that was, hey, slow news day, breaking news, as it happens. Getting the best independent journalists on the planet to come onto my little show and drop some massive truths. I appreciate Mo for doing that today. But that's where we are. We've got unwell to the extent of which, we don't exactly know. I wish I had a lot more information, but that's where we're at right now.
And Miss Assange is trying to coordinate hashtags. She's been doing a great job. We've been trying to step in when we can to also add these on there. But Save Assange, COVID-19, as well as the other three based on where you're at regionally. There is Don't Kill Assange USA, Bail Assange UK, and Evacuate Assange OZ. And those are the US, the UK, and the Australian hashtags that everyone's working on getting trending. So if you're listening tonight, and I know a lot of people have probably already been using them, but please continue to use them. Please get other friends, share those within groups that you're in, and ask people to put these tweets out, because this is really like pedal to the metal. We're probably past the 12th hour at this point, where unless there is some type of dramatic intervention into this situation, Julian's not going to get bailed out of prison, at least in my opinion. And that's heartbreaking to say, because this is a man, this is one of two people, the other being Chelsea Manning, that has served any amount of time for the war crimes that were revealed in Iraq and Afghanistan, the torture programs in Guantanamo Bay, as well as the relationships internationally that showed that US politicians were basically profiting for themselves, as well as making up nefarious plots to overthrow and destabilize other countries. And Julian and Chelsea are the only two that have gone to jail for this or have suffered any type of personal loss for this at all, period.
And let's not forget just how point by point, lawless and without a trace of moral, the entire persecution of Julian Assange has been. In that first week of his extradition hearing, on the first day, we found out that there were multiple plots to kill him while he was in the embassy. Don't worry about that. That's a 7-year-old. Yeah, multiple plots to take his life while in the embassy. Different ways to do it. Different people that they were going to blame for it. The warrant that was the reason they hauled him out of the embassy ostensibly, even though he was sold by Vladimir Lenin, not Vladimir, what's his name? Lenin Moreno. That's
Lenin Moreno, yeah.
It's been a long day. Sold by Lenin Moreno for $4.2 billion initially in an IMF loan to what amounts to the United States State Department by way of the UK court system. UC Global spying on him and everyone that came to visit him in the embassy, and taking that information to one of Sheldon Adelson's casinos and selling it to the CIA, or giving it to the CIA.
And it was it Rafael Correa that granted Assange asylum and citizenship?
Yeah, and now he's in jail.
Yeah, that's actually, I was about to share that article real quick. It's something we didn't have on the docket for tonight, but as we were talking, it just shot back into my memory. Rafael Correa has been arrested and is in jail now. So I'm just going to dig into this a little bit. A court in Ecuador ordered the arrest of former President Rafael Correa on Tuesday over his alleged involvement in a 2012 kidnapping of an opponent. Mr. Correa now lives with his wife. His wife's native Belgium denies the allegations. Sorry for my terrible reading. The judge said she alerted Interpol in a bid to have the 55-year-old extradited. Former lawmaker briefly kidnapped in Colombia, where he fled during the escalating tensions with Mr. Correa. He accused the then president, who led the Andrian nation between 2007 and 2017, of masterminding the abduction. I don't have a bunch of specifics about this, but I do think it is important to put out there in the midst of everything else happening in the world right now, that the person, one of the few people on the international stage that put more than anyone else forward to help Julian, is now being arrested and facing extradition in and of himself. I don't know the full extent of these charges. I'll look into it more, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again on another vigil as this develops.
Yeah, we'll make that a story for Saturday's vigil.
Yeah. But just if anyone out there is interested in looking into it and reading more into it, this is a very, it seems strange that this just so happens to be playing out in the midst of a global pandemic, and just so happens to be playing out after Lenin Moreno received the multi-billion-dollar loan from the International Monetary Fund, and just so happens to be after Julian Assange's bail was denied. So just keep that in the back of your minds too. That, and I'm not saying that it is because of this, because this may or may not be what they're going after him for, but this man is now also facing international persecution. Whether he did or was or wasn't behind this botched kidnapping, he's now facing extradition himself.
Yeah, because we live in a fucking cartoon. I think we're down to the RT article.
And with the virtual march.
Yeah, and we discussed the virtual march a little bit when Nat and Kendra were on. But since we're about ready to wrap up for the night, we'll go ahead and hit this one more time. And it's up on the screen. So, worldwide march in support of Julian Assange will be held online due to the coronavirus pandemic. Apart from disrupting support efforts, the virus is also threatening the jailed WikiLeaks co-founder personally. The world's first virtual march is set to take place on April 11th, exactly 1 year after Assange was dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy in London by British police and taken into custody. As the coronavirus pandemic has seen restrictions and outright bans imposed on mass gatherings across many countries, the march will be held online. The event organizers promised to provide participants with virtual banners, which will become available for sharing on Saturday. The WikiLeaks co-founders' supporters are free to show up with banners of their own as well. The only condition is not to unleash your prime pro-Assange memes before April 11th. Do this, please.
And please register for all of the other events that are out there. For DEPA and the Free the Truth event, for the Courage Foundation's event, for the Sydney Group's event, for the event in New Zealand. And we'll probably around 1 o'clock, depending on what guests we have Eastern time here in the US for our Saturday show, tag in with DEPA's team potentially, and Kendra to stream that event. But it just depends on who we have with us, because we may do an event of our own in that same time and space. But I want everyone as much as possible.
I've got this from Alex at Candles for Assange. She's been...
Yes, I will. I'm going to pull that tweet up and drop it in chat right now because
I've got it on screen here too. Let me blow this up a little bit. So, yeah, groovy. So these are just the various events throughout the day, and look, there we are, and look, there Andrew is, and yeah. So
and it all really kicks off
here in the US, 5:30 p.m. if you're in the UK, 7 p.m. in Australia, 10:30 in the morning, or in New Zealand, 10:30 in the morning in Australia, and I believe there are a couple of more as well, and we'll update you as we find them.
And that's something that Candles for Assange has done an excellent job of, is maintaining a list of all of the protests. That's something that we had set out originally to try our best to do, but couldn't really get that information together and get it on a website quick enough to keep up with everything. So Candles, the number 4 Assange.com. She does an amazing job of collecting all of the events and aggregating them for people to find. Because there's constantly, even amidst this global pandemic, there's still people acting. There's still people that care. There's still people going out. And this April 11th, this Saturday here in the U.S. and this Friday, if here in the U.S., if you're in Australia, is when it kicks off. So this is essentially a 48-hour event because of the way that time works across the world. But please get involved with these. Please use the hashtags and share them. But that's pretty much going to end it for our show tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the little bell if you haven't. Go check out Jason Bermas. Like and subscribe to him as well. Donate to the GoFundMe's of Jason and Liz Moeller, as well as the stuff going on for Reality Winner now too. But you can find us on Twitter at action_4 Assange. You can find me personally at Andrew Zigmund, Zigmund. And I would just like to thank Kendra and Nat for joining us tonight to talk about all this and everything that's going on out there.
My name's Steve Poikinen. I host a show called Slow News Day. You can find that here on YouTube and DLive and Periscope. Big thanks to Nat and to Kendra and to Andrew and Taylor and to Sleepy Josh on the ones and twos. Thanks to everybody for hanging out with us. We appreciate the hell out of you guys. And we see you, and we see you fighting for Julian Assange, and we love you for that. Till next time, good luck to us all.